Hey guys, in this tutorial you'll discover the best settings to export images for print, web and social media for optimum quality. On the screen now I've got an image, and before I export it I need to process it. So what I'm going to do for this image is use one of the awesome presets. So if I just go into my presets menu, I can see that the awesome presets are there, and if I just hover with my image selected over any one of the presets, Lightroom gives you a preview of what each one will look like. And I quite like Cuban Cigar Light. I'm just going to scroll through a few of the others, and also didn't mind Muscle Beach either. No, don't like that. How's Morning Light? That looks not too bad. I think though I'm going to stick with Cuban Cigar Light. So once I'm happy with how my image looks, I can now go ahead and export it. So I come up to my Lightroom menu and I'm going to hit File and come down to Export. And once I click on Export, I get this little drop down menu here, and it's this right hand panel that we're going to be looking at because you've got all these different options. So you have a choice to, in this menu here, you can actually tell Lightroom exactly where you want the images to go. So whether that's on an external hard drive or a folder on your desktop. So you can click on specific folder, and then you'll get another drop down menu where you can choose exactly where you want the file to go. So you can then click through your menu, and I already have a folder, and I'm going to use my high-res images folder there, hit choose. Okay, so I know where my image is going, and you've also got the option there to put it even into a subfolder there. And all right, so that's that first box. Next, you've got a choice to rename the file. Now, I recommend that you do all the naming of files inside of Lightroom. And when you're exporting the file, you export so you've got the raw files in Lightroom, so they'll have the .cr2 if it's a Canon, or .raw, I think, if it's a Fuji. So they have their own raw camera settings there. And so what you'll have when you're exporting is either a JPEG or a TIFF file. So I recommend that you keep the naming the same, but if you need to, you've got an option to rename the files, and so you can click there, and then Lightroom gives you all these different options. If you're going to name at this point, what I would recommend is that you add a custom name, but keep the original file number. So you might want to, so you'll have all the original camera numbers from the raw files, and you might want to name the front of it with the specific job name if you're going to rename it, and then there's some kind of consistency there. So you can click on that if you need to. The video obviously doesn't need to be touched. Now, file settings, and this is going to change depending on what it is you're exporting. So let's say for this image, I want to export it as a high-res file. So high-res JPEG. So I'm going to choose JPEG as an export preference. And the .jpeg, that's a universal language that all computers can read and see. So that's a great all around it. Don't use anything else unless you've been otherwise told. So there may be instances where the print place that are doing the images will request PSD or TIFF file, or you might want to export it as the original file. So if you have a RAW file and you want to export it, you can use that original format there. So that's when you would choose original. Otherwise, JPEG is what we'll choose for this one. Now, quality is going to influence the size of the image, and if you go too far, it also influences the quality of the image. So you want to be going somewhere between 100 and 80. I usually play it safe and go around 90. Now, there is a big difference in file size between the even from 70 to 100%. I want to show you what that looks like now. Now, just to give you a visual of exactly what's happening when we're talking about JPEG compression, is what's happening is that the software Lightroom is compressing all the information that makes up an image, and the more you compress it, the tighter that information is. And what that controls is the file size and the file quality. And just to give you a visual of how that looks, basically what's happening is that the compression, if you imagine your image is like a piece of paper, the more you compress it, the more scrunched up it's going to be. So at 100%, nothing is happening. At 90%, it's starting to just push it in and compress it a little bit. So it's trying to make the files smaller by compressing all that information. And as we go up to 80% compression, it's just compressing it that little bit more. And 70%, it's just scrunching it up a little bit more. And 60% a little bit more. And 50% a little bit more. And 40% more. We're scrunching up that information and making it smaller and smaller and smaller until the smallest the file can be is at a compression of 10%. So I want to show you how this looks in file size and also file quality. So if I take my original image now and I export it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to export it at 100%, and I'm also going to export it at a compression of 90%, all the way through to a compression of 10%. So I'll have all these different files and I'll show you the difference. I go to the folder that those images have been downloaded to. I want to show you the difference in file size firstly. So the image that I exported at 100%, have a look at the file size, 7.7 meg, but you can see that the dimensions, 516 by 3744, okay, they're going to remain consistent, but what you're going to notice is there's going to be a huge difference in file size. So at 100%, it gives you the maximum file size as a JPEG, with these dimensions. So remember, as a JPEG with 100%, it still has some compression. All right, now let's compare that to the 10% compressed. All right, so have a look at the file size there. It's only 334K. The dimensions are the same. The difference between the no compression and the highest amount of compression is that you get a difference in file size and file quality. So we go somewhere in between, like a 50, you're going to get a slightly larger file size. everything else stays the same. So it'll still have the same number of pixels, but what you'll see happens is if we bring up the original files, so let's have a look at the file at 100%. So I'm zooming in at 625%. So that's it there. You can see that there's grain, but I'm not seeing any pixels. If I compare that to the compression at 10, okay, that you can see all of the pixelation. So you can see where the deterioration, and there's also color shifts going on. So what's happening is as you're compressing that file more and more and more, you're starting to get more pixelation happen. So having a smaller file size, more compressed, comes at a cost of a deterioration to the file. So what I've done is you can see at 50 compression, there is still a little bit of deterioration when I compare it to that 100 compression. So I can see grain at 50, it's starting to pixelate. So it starts to look good at around 70. So you can see that when the difference is quite minute, then you could probably get away. And as I say, I ideally work between 80 and 100. I will compromise file size. I like to have slightly more information in there. And I just want to bring that folder back up so that you can have a look at the difference between a full-size JPEG, 7.7 meg, compared to at 70, 1.6 meg. So if you're trying to upload a couple of hundred files, that's going to save you hours. And also at the other end, it's going to save the client hours. So I find with a lot of my TV clients, they like the JPEG file when it's unopened is compressed so that it ends up being around 2 megabyte in size, and that makes it easy for them to email those files around relatively quickly. And so that works out at something like an 8 compression works for that. That gives me about a 2.5 megabyte file size. And so in case you're getting confused by this, this is the file size when the image is not opened. Once I open this image in Photoshop, you will see that it's actually the complete size. So it's just this is just referring to the compression when it's attached as an image. So remember I showed you that visual of it getting compressed like a piece of paper. That's just what's going on. So if I open any of these images and I go to image size, you can see that it's actually a 60.2 meg file. It's just that the compression is different, and I can do that on any of them. If I check the compressed at 10, image size, it's still 60.2 megabyte as a file that's open, but it's just that the quality is different. So that's what you want to weigh up when you're choosing that, how much to compress your images when you're exporting them in Lightroom. All right, so the next setting that you want to look at is this one here called color space. Now you've got a number of choices here. You've got sRGB, display, P3, Adobe RGB 1998, and ProPhoto RGB. And then if you wanted, you've got a whole host of others that you can download if you need to. So what exactly is the color space, and what does it do, and how does it influence how your images look, and which should you use and when? So to have a look, to understand that, let's have a look at what those three main players are. So in the color space, you've got sRGB, Adobe RGB, and ProPhoto RGB. And these are the three main ones that you hear about the most. So put simply, a color profile, it's like a universal language so that all the colors in an image look the same across different devices or printing formats. So the color profiles, they'll vary by the range of colors they represent. So you've got sRGB, that's got the smallest color range, and then you've got ProPhoto has the largest color range, and then Adobe 1998 is somewhere in the middle. Now, if you the reason that you need a color profile is, let's say that you're printing an image, you want to make sure that the image you're looking at on the screen is the same as the image that your printer will open up on another computer, possibly on the other side of the world. So it's like a universal language that, you know, you're both seeing exactly the same red or the same yellow so that there's no confusion. It's actually a really good little system. So sRGB, as I said, it's got the smallest color range, but it is the best color profile because it looks good on all screens, so all different computers, and it is the default setting for the whole interwebs. So that is probably one of the reasons why you may have been using another color profile, looked at your image and thought, that looks amazing, I'm now going to upload it to a blog or to a sharing site, and then when you see it on that site, you notice that the colors don't look as good or it looks different. That's because it gets converted to that sRGB space. So to avoid that happening, what you want to do is, whenever you're exporting anything to be viewed on the web, and that includes proofs that you're sending clients, then use the sRGB color space. So that's the checkbox that you check when you're exporting those images, and that'll ensure that you get the optimum quality out of that image. So you can see on the screen when I've got these three side by side, basically sRGB gives you the smallest amount of colors. Adobe RGB has a broader range of colors, and ProPhoto has the most colors. So if you want to have, like, I've done a little simulation of how that might look on the screen here, so you can see that when you convert an image to sRGB, you might notice that it looks a little bit dull, or you lose some of the pop. That's remembering that we don't have as many colors to play with. So sRGB is going to give you a flatter image. Adobe RGB, you can see that as we transition to that space, you can see that the colors are brighter. You've got a greater tonal range, the image pops, and then in ProPhoto RGB, it pops again. So you've got like a brighter, more colors, more tonal range. So within the red in ProPhoto RGB, you're going to have, like, you know, thousands more tones of red compared to sRGB, which will have fewer tones of red, so you get a not as poppy an image. So that's the difference there. So as a general rule, when I'm exporting for web, sRGB. When I'm exporting for print and high res, I export in Adobe RGB, unless my printer directs me to do otherwise. The next option you have is image size. So if you want to export your images to a particular size, you can check that, and you can change the width and height, and you can change that in pixels per inch or inches or centimeters, so that you can control that. You can also just get Lightroom to have a particular size for the long edge only, or you can make it for the short edge only. So you can, again, set that in pixels, inches, or centimeter. So you've got all of that, or you can limit the size to a fixed amount of megapixels, which is what you want the image to be, or a percentage of the size. So let's just say that you wanted all the images resized to 50% of the original. Well, you can control that here in the image size. So going back to when I'm resizing for the different options that I might have. So I have, when I'm resizing something, a full-size JPEG, I don't touch this at all. I will not change the image size. If I'm sending something out for email and it's, say, a proof or low-res export, then I set the image size so the longest edge is 500 pixels high, and I have a resolution of 72 dpi and ppi, sorry, 72 pixels per inch. And it is the pixels per inch when you're sending something through the web that you want to keep this low, because this affects the load time and the send time of your image. But the good news is it does not influence the quality of your image, because all images are viewed on the web at 72 pixels per inch. So anything going online, that includes Facebook and Instagram, you want to have that scaled to 72 dpi. So for a web quality image, I've got that set to a long edge of 500 pixels. If I'm exporting for Facebook, I set my long edge to 2048 pixels at a resolution of 72 ppi, and that is the optimum setting for Facebook. And I've also got that sRGB color space. If I am doing an Instagram export, again, that color space, sRGB, resolution 72 dpi, and I have my long edge to 1080 pixels. Now, just to make life easier for you, I've actually created user presets that you can download and install, and you can use them for email, Facebook, high-res JPEG exports, and Instagram exports. So you can click on these, and with one click they will resize, and all you need to do is choose the folder, the destination folder that you need to use. Now, to download these presets, what you need to do is, firstly, you'll download the presets, and what will happen when you open your folder up and you choose the folder, obviously, to put the presets in, what you'll get is, to install the Lightroom export actions, firstly download the actions onto your computer and unzip the file. You'll get a folder with all the presets there, so email, Facebook, high-res JPEG, and Instagram. And what you need to do is open up Lightroom and go into Preferences, and then you want to come down to the second tab across, Presets, click on that, and you want to come to Show All Other Lightroom Presets. That's the one you want to click on. Click on that, and you'll get another dialog box, okay, and it'll have Lightroom, and what you want to find is Export Presets, okay. You'll click on that, and then you'll come to User Presets, open that, and that's where you'll transfer your user presets. Restart Lightroom, and then you will have those in the export dialog box as well, so you'll have those ready to go there. All right, so just another couple of dialog boxes that I want to go through. So the next one under image resize is you've got output for sharpening. So you've got the option of sharpening for the screen or this type of paper that you use. Now, I, as a general rule, don't touch this, But if that's something that definitely is worth experimenting with, just like the way that I did the experimenting with the compression, have a look at how that sharpens your images for screen or sharpens them for print. And if you like what it does, then continue using it. Next one along is metadata. So you have an option to include your copyright information, copyright and contact info, or you can have everything and you can strip the image of the camera raw info, or you can take out all the metadata. So basically how much you leave in or take out is up to you. I usually include the copyright and contact info of the image so that in case someone finds it, or it gets sent to a magazine and they haven't bothered to forward my details, all that the supplier need to do is right click on the image and my copyright and contact information come up. So that's an important one. And so just remembering that when we import images, that's when you've got the opportunity to embed that metadata in the image. So when I go to, let's just say I was importing the images, I have on the far right here, you've got a drop down menu, and you can apply whenever you're importing the images, you can check and have your copyright info there. And if you haven't done that, there's actually another tutorial that runs you through how to change that. But just quickly here for this tutorial, you can go down to edit presets, and then you can name it with the 2019 or 2020 or whatever it is, the year that it is. Add in your contact information, so phone number, email, website, and the fact that you copyright it. And if you've got a studio address, then your studio address. So that is all in there at that time. All right, so finally, let's have a look. Export. The last little one that you have is you've got the option to watermark the image. So there is, again, an entire tutorial on how to do that. It covers all the ways to do that in Lightroom, but basically you can check on that watermark and then you can either add a simple copyright, or as you can see, I've got like heaps that I've created and changed over the years. So, you can edit the watermark and add whatever you want. Once you click on that, I can have copyright Gina Milicia, or I can have my website or whatever I want to include, and I can also increase the size of that. You can add you can change the opacity of the watermark. Or if I wanted to, I could add a graphic, which would be, I could have my logo that I could add over the top. I could put another photo over the top. So you've got like lots of options. You can even change the font of your watermark. You can give it a drop shadow. You can change the location that it's in. So you could put it in the middle, and also you can rotate it along the side. So you've got lots and lots of different options for your watermark if you choose to send one out. And I think that's absolutely essential when you're sending out proofs for portrait clients, or you're sending sensitive stuff out. You want to make sure that you put your little watermark on, and if your images have not been paid for, then you want to make it like across the middle somewhere where it's very difficult for the client to take that image without you knowing about it. All right, so and then that's the opacity there. So you might want to ghost it a little bit so people can still see the expressions on faces, so that they can choose images but they can't really do much with them. All right, and so that's it. And so, yeah, you've got like one last one, the Post-processing, I don't really use this one, but you can tell it to, once it's exported, you can open it in Photoshop or open it in another application. So lots of options there. I download those user presets. That's going to save you lots of time. Have a designated folder where the different images go, so you're not having to scramble around and look for them. And that should cover you in exporting images using Lightroom.